Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcome back to the Hydration with Heart segment brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut. Today we're featuring returning guest and contributor Robert Edward Grant. He's an innovator, a successful entrepreneur, and the best-selling author of Philomath. He specializes in number theory, mathematical physics, and blockchain technologies. He's a prolific inventor and founder of several corporate enterprises. He truly does it all. He's an expert in the realms of mystery, science, and unexplained phenomena. We'll be tackling everything from the possibility of extraterrestrial life to the real concerns surrounding nuclear threats and even the strange drone sightings that have sparked more questions than answers. Whether you believe in these mysteries or not, the facts are out there, and today we're going to uncover them together. Welcome to the unveiling of the unknown, exploring drone phenomena, national security, and the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement with Robert Edward Grant. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Hi, great to be with you again.
Oh, love having you on. You're one of my favorite contributors. And Robert, it's fascinating how the line between fact and fiction is becoming increasingly blurred. It's kind of scary, especially when it comes to unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? In fact, according to a recent survey by the National UFO Reporting Center, not that I feel like they're accurate on anything they report, there was over 7,000 UFO sightings that were reported across the US, and that was 2023 alone. And with the increase in these reports, people are starting to question the possibility that we might not be alone in the universe. So what's your take on the current state of these quote unquote UFOs and the growing public interest in extraterrestrial life?
The shift that's happening is not that there's a huge, massive increase in the number of UAPs or UFOs, in my opinion. It's just that the number of people that are raising their consciousness through this global awakening that's going on right now is actually what's changing the scenario for everyone. Because what was already there before, and these interdimensional, I call them more interdimensional and interterrestrial than extraterrestrial beings, because they've been here all along. We are now just able to see them as we raise our consciousness. You know, one good analogy would be like this. A bird has to have its retinal receptors at a certain frequency in order to perceive the colors of other birds. Now, we often would see a certain black bird like a crow as purely black, but if we raised our frequency to the way that other birds would see it, they would see it with rainbow colors. This is because they have a different frequency that they can actually have access to. Their frequency range is much more expanded as birds than human beings are. So as a result, they see different colors altogether. And this is exactly what I believe is analogous to what's happening right now. The things that we couldn't see before as we raise consciousness are now becoming visible to people that are average people around the world. And we're starting to see this massive increase in UAP reportings as a result.
Wow. There's a rising interest among the public, particularly within the, with the US government's declassification of some military UFO footage. That's sparking a lot of conversation, thinking the government is hiding more than they're letting on, and that there's a deeper truth about these sightings. So I think, people are starting to, yeah, you're right, become aware. Now, speaking of the unknown, there's also been an increase in drone sightings, right, over the US, particularly near sensitive areas like military bases. And a report in December of 2024 revealed that drones were spotted over an arsenal, Picatinny Arsenal, a military research facility, and many speculated about their purpose, with theories ranging from surveillance to possible threats. So, with the increasing drone activity, including these mysterious maneuvers and unexplained sightings, could there be a connection between drones and national security concerns, like the possible retrieval of nuclear weapons or dirty bombs?
You know, if you look at declassified documents from the CIA, you'll notice that they've known for quite some time that human beings are capable of perceiving higher dimensions. And as a result, if they knew that interterrestrial beings, right, are in higher dimensions and all around us, then basically they could also know, if by raising our consciousness that we would actually be able to perceive those things, then there might have to be psyops in order to control the population so that this mass awakening happening all at the same time wouldn't startle the public too much. You know, it's a very, very delicate balance to keep people in their houses, to keep people from, like, like losing it, as it were, if they thought there was the end of the world coming or something crazy was going to happen. And so they might have to actually put in place certain psyop activities in order to sort of mitigate the risks associated with looting and everything else that, you know, a society in pandemonium could basically reach. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, I was really startled to find. I did a podcast recently with John Peterson, who is the CEO of the Arlington Institute out of Maryland. And he's worked for many years as a futurist for the Department of Defense. And he predicted this. He said within 39 days, in the podcast I did back with him in October, he said within 39 days of the Joe Rogan podcast with President Trump, that there would be a huge, massive increase in the number of UAP sightings, as well as drone sightings in the skies. And he said this on my podcast well before any of the first reports coming out of New Jersey started to trickle in, and then became an avalanche, right? Because now we're hearing it over and over and over again, all over the place. And I myself, I saw 2 plasmoids in Laguna Beach, and everybody in Laguna Beach was videotaping. I was just driving down the street, down Pacific Coast Highway, and I looked over to see what everyone was looking at and videotaping, and I caught it also on film. And it's everywhere now. So how much of this is this expansion in consciousness that is now allowing us to see things that we couldn't see before? And if you look at programs and projects like the Stargate project, et cetera, they've been using things like telepathy and remote viewing for many years as mechanisms to be able to get intelligence for the intelligence community, in particular the CIA. But all the 3-letter agencies have had access to this type of information. If you haven't seen the telepathy tapes, which is or listened to it as a podcast, I highly recommend it, because this is showing this advancement of how human beings are moving beyond the former paradigms of communication, where children with autism have been tested on this in a very unassailable way from a scientific perspective, and it's demonstrating that they actually have telepathic abilities.
I read that too. Yeah, and that's fascinating to me. Before we digress too far, I want to touch on something you just said. So, as we're discussing these intriguing possibilities, we should also touch on the reports of these mysterious orbs and plasmoids that have been spotted, like you saw, and various observers have seen them. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Atmospheric and Solar Terrestrial Physics found an unusual correlation between certain atmospheric anomalies and plasma-related objects, which some describe as orbs. What can you tell us about plasmoids and orbs? Are these phenomena related to extraterrestrial activity, or could they be something else entirely?
What plasma does is it's able to shear off electrons from their entanglement associated with protons. So, you know, every proton, if it's like hydrogen, has 1 proton and 1 electron. But what plasma is able to do is it's able to have that electron dissociate from the proton. And then you can recohere it using electromagnetic caging into different elements potentially. So this is one of the scientific theories that is basically leading to a lot of research in these areas. So this means that you could basically use it for things potentially like teleportation. You could, you know, recohere something. You could basically break it apart from its electrons and then put it back together with its electrons again, and then have it reappear somewhere else. So you could potentially use it in combination with things like wormholes and Einstein-Rosen bridges, right, as they're also often known in physics. So this is an area of the most cutting edge science that's happening right now, combined with quantum entanglement, that I think is super interesting. I don't know that our government has this degree. So for some of the videos that I've seen, we might think that they're plasmoids, but if they are government derived, then they're more than likely holographic. So it's more like a projection that's being projected up. Now you have to really think that the government's going to be super sinister, right, in order to do something like that, just to trick all of the people. And that could well be, or it could be a foreign actor. We simply don't know. And that's why I'm hoping to have some of these questions answered as soon as Donald Trump takes office.
Yeah, because he's going to be way more transparent. He's demanding answers, because deep state, obviously, there's something else going on. But the plasmoids in the orbs, I literally saw a video footage of a plasmoid or orb come in contact with the drone, and the drone just boom went down. It was fascinating to see. So what you just described just made so much sense, because if they really want to get nefarious, these plasmoids and or orbs could be used for nefarious activity. I mean, we have planes that have gone missing off of radars that we just can't find, entire airplanes that they've scoured the ocean to look for and they cannot find them, right? So it's interesting that this does exist. So your insights into plasmoids are totally fascinating, just like all of your insights. As someone who's been in the field of research and observation, one may think there's a real scientific basis to the orb sightings, as we may be dealing with something that challenges our understanding of physics and the universe itself. So I love how you just tied it all together. Now, moving beyond drones and orbs, we have to consider the darker, more disturbing possibility that some of these sightings might have something to do with terrorist activities, right? So the US government has issued temporary restrictions on drones in several cities, including New Jersey, after reports of drones near sensitive sites occurred. And with the increase in concerns around nuclear threats and dirty bombs, do you think that's a possibility that some of these drone sightings are connected to such threats?
Well, I mean, look, in this day and age, I've learned to never say never. So, I mean, a lot of things that I thought would be impossible, I've now learned and through my own experience have actually happened. Like, why did we end up with, things like the whole pandemic? I mean, when now it's become widely accepted that yes, that was a leak out of a lab in Wuhan. And for years, everyone was like, no, 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 that's a conspiracy theory. So, it's like I've never been one to be a conspiracy theorist, but when all the conspiracies seem to be turning out to be true in some way, shape, or form, you have to start asking the question. It's like, screw me once, shame on you. Screw me twice, shame on me.
Shame on me, yeah. Yeah, and
So this
it's
is
deeply concerning that the possibility of a dirty bomb or a nuclear threat is even being discussed, just like that we had to deal with a pandemic. And what's most worrying is that there was a recent shipment mentioned in the news, which reportedly involved a dirty bomb search in New
Yep,
Jersey,
I saw that. Mhm.
that just went missing off the port, and then now they're all frantically looking for this. So I do think that we might be facing a legitimate threat here. I don't think it's just a case of heightened paranoia. And to your point, I don't put anything past the government, like nothing.
Yeah, I don't. I, to be honest, it's like a lot of people are worried about the intrusion of aliens and from all the movies we've watched over the years. But now I'm starting to wonder if all of that approach to it was also just propaganda. And maybe the real thing that we should be worried about is the enemy we have within, and that is our government itself. This is where more people have died as a result of wars because of governments, right? More people have died because of, things like that have been forced on the populations because of government control, that you have to ask yourself the question, what is the role of it going forward?
Yeah.
I have to ask that question. I'm a human being. First and foremost, I'm a citizen of Earth. And I really don't care about a lot of these artificial borders that we have around the globe. And I think a lot of people in the world are coming to that same conclusion. So you have to ask ourselves the question, maybe, and I think a lot of people think the advent of us being able to realize unequivocally that we are not alone in the universe is like a lot of people are just thinking, please come help us.
Now, moving on to as you've pointed out, there's a gap in public knowledge about these incidents, and conspiracy theories are beginning to swirl. For example, some have speculated that these drones, right, are preparing us for an extraterrestrial invasion, given the frequency of unexplained sightings and encounters. And there was a 2024 study in Science Advances, and it noted that the discovery of biosignatures on exoplanets may soon allow us to detect alien life. So, could these drone sightings be a precursor to something even more profound?
I believe so. I mean, look, I tend to think of it like this. So think of a grasshopper. A grasshopper lives in a field. It thinks that the field is its universe. It dies in the same field. Let's say it dies and comes back and gets reincarnated as a monkey outside of Rio de Janeiro in some jungle. It has an expansion of flora and fauna. There's more different species for it to learn, both in plant life as well as in animal life. Then it comes back and gets reincarnated and lives in rural Alabama. This person in rural Alabama has an expansion of flora and fauna. It can watch TV, and this person knows that the sky is super blue in Alaska, but has never been to visit Alaska, so hasn't really experienced it on his own. Then this person dies and comes back as a metropolitan woman like Zen Sams, who has basically traveled the world and has experienced and knows that there are certain tribes and indigenous peoples that speak certain languages, has heard about it, may not speak those languages, but knows about it. What's the next level of evolution? The next evolution for that person, that personage, is an expansion of flora and fauna again. And the next level of expansion becomes something that starts to go beyond the scope of this current planetary experience, right? The Earth experience. So now you start getting into something that people refer to as the Galactic Federation, right? And this expansion of planets. There are already people, lots of people that are experiencing life in that experience. And one thing that we've learned in physics is that everything we thought was fact is actually merely a facet. The only way to get the whole truth about anything is to sum the total of all possible subjective perspectives of that thing. And what we now learned since 2022 in the Nobel Prize was given in physics that basically showed quantum entanglement is real. And the subject title on the Scientific American article basically talking about it was "Local Realism is False, and this year's Nobel Prize winners proved it." So physics as we know it as a material construct is now literally falling apart. Physics as we know it in this concept of we live in an objective material reality is now literally disintegrating. It's dissolving entirely and being replaced by notions of mentalism and subjectivism. What we thought was objective is actually just subjective. And the only way to get back to some degree of objectivity is to sum all possible perspectives of subjectivity. So this idea that we're not even in a reality-based world is more akin to Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis. And it's something I actually do ascribe to. I believe that we are in a simulation, and it's a simulation of mind, and the universe is mental. And so therefore, becoming aware of things is what changes your reality around you. It's the awareness that makes the shift.
Now, let's shift gears just for a moment to discuss the role of technology, right? So the role of technology is kind of fascinating because we're witnessing this explosion of unmanned vehicles, whether drones or otherwise. In fact, the FAA has reported a significant increase in drone usage in recent years with over 800,000 registered drones in the US alone. So how do you see the role of drones evolving in the near future? And do you think that they could actually be used as instruments for discovery or destruction?
I don't ascribe to the belief that we need to have a massive, military to protect us from another government. So maybe governments are the issue. So let's face it, democracy is the least worst of governments. And I think that, hopefully with this raise in consciousness, we can actually come up with something better that doesn't have a situation where we are amassing so many weapons and drones and nuclear bombs and dirty bombs and everything so that we could destroy each other, but rather have governments that actually serve the people because they're of the people, by the people, and for the people. And once you finally realize that the facts you thought you accumulated in life are merely facets of a larger prism of truth, then you start asking yourself the question, why did, instead of asking yourself the question, why did something happen to me? You ask the question, why did I choose this?
Yeah.
When
exactly.
we're in a matrix of mind, you have to remember that. So it's time for humanity, I believe, to choose sovereignty of its own. And that we shouldn't even be asking these questions anymore about dirty bombs and how we can destroy each other and everything, because we're just destroying ourselves. And if you want to get rid of the wars outside of you, get rid of the wars within yourself and be the change you'd like to see in the world.
Wow. Well, listen, I want to have you back for more, but thank you so much for coming on. You are amazing. You are so insightful. You are a master at what you do. I love that. I could call you my friend.
Oh, absolutely. Likewise.
That was the Hydration with Heart segment brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut. That was returning contributor Robert Edward Grant, best-selling author of Philomath. Head directly to robertedwardgrant.com and check him out on the gram at Robert Edward Grant. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut.
Discover the refreshing taste of 100% pure coconut water that actually tastes great. Naturally sweet with no artificial flavors or added sugar. It's packed with electrolytes to keep you hydrated throughout your day. And with 10% of profits going to charity, every sip makes a difference. Pure taste, pure goodness. Experience nature's Gatorade. Visit Once Upon a Coconut or naturesgatorade.com.